Alright, yeah, how's it going, guys? And welcome back to some more Gwent, the Witcher card game. So, this week we're going to be taking a look at a deck I like to call Marauder Assault. Essentially plays around with the card Mahakam Marauder, this one right here. Let me just sort this out, and we'll walk through it. So, Mahakam Marauder is a 7-point loyal unit that is agile. Whenever this unit is boosted, damaged, strengthened, or weakened, boost it by 2. So, the entire deck essentially revolves around the boosting of units in our on our field. So we have things like Full Moon Potions, Commander's Horns, Hawker Healers. We'll go through them more specifically as we get through the deck, but the general idea is to make use of these as much as possible. So if we want to make use of these as much as possible, we want to make sure that they consistently come out in every single round. That's why we're running 3 copies of Dwarven Agitator. Dwarven Agitator is a 2-power agile unit that spawns a base copy of a random different bronze dwarf from your deck. So anything that is not the Agitator, that is a dwarf in our deck, gets copied and played into the field. Well, we've made careful considerations as to the construction of this deck, and the only target that it can find is a Mahakam Marauder. So every single one of these agitators is actually kind of like a 9-point Marauder over 2 bodies. That's the way you can think about it. So we do technically have about 6 Marauders, potentially more if we go for Hattori on that, but we're not going to be doing that. We'll get to that in a second on what we'll actually be doing. So let's go through the boosts, essentially, that this deck has available to it. First and foremost, we'll go through the golds. We've got Zoltan Shive, 8 strength agile unit. When you deploy him, you move 3 units to this row on their side and strengthen all moved allies by 2 and damage all moved enemies by 2. So he's 8 points, but then he essentially makes up 6 points more in terms of movement. That's just if he moves the enemies. If he strengthens allies, we probably want to be moving our Marauders. So when you move these and strengthen them by 2, up to 9, he'll actually get boosted again, so get another 2 points on that, making them 11 points at that point. So, you know, we can get an extra 12 points by the strengthen, and we can get 6 points by the movement of the enemies, depending on the situation that we find ourselves in. We can mess around with that. I do find myself quite a lot using this to move enemies as well, because there is a lot of consume running around, so you can move Ran warriors and things like that out of the way of their targets and really mess up their plan. So stuff like that, really quite useful. We then have ourselves a 1 copy of Yennefer, 6 strength agile unit. When you deploy her, you either spawn a unicorn or a Chironex. What we want to probably be doing is going with the unicorn. So that's a 1 strength agile unit. When you deploy it, you boost all other units by 2. So for every unit on the board, we get an extra 2 points. That only adds up because it does boost all units, so it boosts our opponents as well. We need to make sure that we have more units than our opponent if we want to go for the unicorn, otherwise Chironex is usually the strategy here. But it should be noted that when the unicorn boosts up one of our Marauders, actually boosts another one again. So you can count the Marauders as like 2 units in terms of boosting. And it's really, really bad for swarm decks, like Dagon Swarm, but I think is it Unseen Elder now that they play in Swarm? It's really bad for them because this is kind of their win condition and we play into it quite well, so we can really nerf Yennefer in a sense so that she's not as powerful. We've then got Ale of the Ancestors. This is one that I want to play around with quite a little bit. I'm not entirely sure about it, but from what I've been playing right now, it has been pretty sweet. So 4 strength agile unit. When you deploy it, it gains 6 armor, and also while it is on a row, it bathes that row in golden froth. Every turn, that golden froth boosts 3 random units on the row by 1, so 3 points minimum. If we've got 3 Marauders on that particular row, then it actually boosts them by 3, so that's actually a maximum of 9 points every single round that this Ale of the Ancestors gets us, which is pretty sweet. So it really helps as well to stagger all of our units as well. So if we do have 2 Marauders on the same strength, but we've got a quite swarmed out row, then Ale of the Ancestors allows us to potentially stagger them when it doesn't hit the other Marauder. So that plays around Igni and Scorch and things like that, which can be pretty bad for this deck. Should be noted that things like Artifact Compression are quite bad against the Marauders deck, but a lot of the times we do have a lot of Marauders, and we do use things like Commander's Horn, so we're not just pumping the Marauders, it's just that these are usually where most of the points are placed. So you got to have careful consideration where you do boost most things, but by boosting these Marauders, if they are left unanswered, then it's usually an easy 2-round win. So you can go 2-0 quite easily with this deck if it's left unanswered, which for the most part I've been finding that it has been, so it's quite interesting. Finally, we've got a Royal Decree, which does allow us to grab any one of our 3 golden cards as well. So we pretty much just virtually add an extra copy of each of these gold. So this is any of them that we want it to be at any given time, as long as we haven't already played it. That's the idea anyway. On to the silvers, we've got Commander's Horn. So Commander's Horn boosts 5 adjacent units by 4. So that is 20 points just on a base row. However, if we do actually hit one of the Marauders, then that is an extra 2 points there as well. So you can imagine how much higher this gets. It's minimum usually 20 points and goes even higher as long as we've got Marauders on the same row. It's pretty much what we want to do. We row stack the living crap out of our deck. It does play into Marigold's Hailstorm a lot, but nobody plays Marigold's Hailstorm anymore, so that is why this deck is allowed to run rampant like it is. After that, we've got Yarpen Zigrim. Yarpen, another boosting dwarf. He enters, he gains resilience, which allows us to carry over another unit into the second round, or even the third round, depending on how the game is going. And he also says, whenever a dwarf ally is played, boost self by 1. Plays very nicely with the Dwarven Agitators that grab another dwarf, so a single bronze card actually boosts these by 2. So he goes up to 9 just off of a single Agitator, and we keep boosting like that as well. We then have Barclay Elves, and we have Hattori as well. This is a pretty decent combo. So Barclay Elves is a 2-strength siege unit. So when you place him onto the siege row, you play a random bronze or silver dwarf from your deck and strengthen it by 3. So the nice chain that we can get is Barclay Elves into Dwarven Agitator, makes this a 5-strength Agitator, which then pulls a 7-point Marauder. That is a pretty nice chain of 3 cards out from there. We could also just straight up pull a Marauder as well, so it's quite good. If you hit Dennis Cranmer as well, we'll get to Dennis Cranmer in a second, but that also works out, but that can be a little bit more conditional. So that's something to be aware of. If Dennis is in your deck, there is a chance that it hits Dennis. In fact, let's go on to Dennis now, shall we? Dennis Cranmer. 8-strength Agile unit. When you deploy him, you strengthen all other dwarves in your deck, hand, and on your side of the board by 1. So every single dwarf you haven't played gets strengthened. All of them in your hand get strengthened, and the ones on the board get strengthened as well. So if we have any Marauders on the board, that actually boosts them by 3, which is pretty cool as well. So you want to be playing Dennis when you've got the maximum amount of Marauders on the field. Should be noted that the Marauders don't get the boost when they're in your deck or the hand, so that's why you got to be a little bit considerate about when you play Dennis, because you can miss out on a little bit of value if you've still got Marauders in your hand, if you plan on playing those Marauders at least. That is. We're going to go to Hattori, because I did kind of miss out the Barclay Elves and Hattori combo. So Hattori says, this is one of the newest cards, and it's pretty sweet. 3 power, Agile unit. When you deploy him, you resurrect a bronze or silver scoia'tael unit with power less than or equal to this unit. So anything 3 strength or lower, Hattori can resurrect. So we can resurrect a Agitator, so we can get another Marauder. We can resurrect a Sage if we want to use our Full Moon Potion in our graveyards. We can resurrect a Barclay Elves, which can pull an Agitator, which can pull a Marauder, and then we've got 4 units on the board. It's about a 20-point play with Hattori, if you can get that one going in round 2. So that sets up Teruvial as well. So you can stick that right in between them, and you'll have an Agitator, Marauder, sorry. to hit as well. Teruvial is really fun. Can win you the rounds without your opponent really realizing it. If they don't do the math, it makes it a little bit difficult for them to count it out for the most part. Very time consuming. So 6 power ambush units, so it gets played face down, so it could be a Moran or the there is another bronze one. It's not siege support, I can't quite remember, but it is a bamboozle of a Teruvial essentially. But most people will assume that this is going to be Teruvial anyway, so they'll kind of see it coming for the most part. But if they do see it coming, that usually means that they will probably pass, because when your opponent passes, you turn this unit over and boost 2 units on each side by 2. So you've got your 6 points, and then you've got 4 points on each side. So on the left side, you go from 6 to 10, then to 14, and you get an extra 2 for each of those that are Marauders on your side as well. So you can get Teruvial to be usually about a 20 point, even more than that, silver card, which is pretty awesome. The one fun thing about this deck is that with the Marauder combination, all of these cards are actually more points than they appear to be. So you get a really just high value card every single time. So for example, our 2-point Agitator is actually a 9-point card. Our 6-point Teruvial, which is usually 14 points, is even more than that. Our Dennis boosts up our Marauders, so it's more points than it usually is as well. That kind of thing. So it's pretty sweet. We've then got Hawker Healers, speaking of things that are more points than they appear. 5 points on the strength, but it also, when you deploy it, you boost 2 allies by 3. You want to make sure you've got 2 Marauders on the field when you do this, because when you boost those 2 allies by 3, they actually boost by an extra 5, which makes a Hawker Healer a 15-point bronze card, which is nice and reasonable as far as bronzes go, if not a little bit better. So you can really just force your opponent out of the round just by playing single cards that just stomp all over them. And you can do that pretty quickly as well. It doesn't take much setup to make sure that this happens. We've also got Elven Mercenary as well, which only ever pulls the Full Moon Potions. So Full Moon Potion is a alchemy card that boosts 6 random allies by 2, so that's 12 points on a bronze card, and extra 2 points for every single Marauder you hit. Again, you're seeing a little bit of a trend right here. So a 12-point bronze could be more depending on the number of Marauders and the number it hits. The more units you got on the field as well, the more chance that you have of not hitting the Marauders, which can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. So that's something to be aware of. And finally, we've got ourselves 2 copies of Sages. When you deploy them, they are 3 strength siege units, and they resurrect a bronze alchemy or spell card and banish it. So once you've played your Full Moon Potions, you have your Sages ready to resurrect a potion and use it all over again. So we can get super value from that. So that's a 3-point with a 12 attached to it again. Lots of value. Finally, we've got Commander's Horn. Oh, we've actually talked about Commander's Horn, and I think we've actually talked about the entire deck. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comments section below. If you have any suggestions for improvements, I'm happy to hear them. I think this deck is fairly well tuned. I've been playing it last season to great success, and this season to equally good success as well. So it will be a matter of waiting until the metagame shifts die down to find out what the top tier decks are right now, but this deck currently beats most of the Skellige decks that I've been seeing, beats any Swarm decks, although they've fallen out of favour with the Harpies being nerfed. So it still beats them though. scoia'tael it does have a little bit of a problem with, so scoia'tael Alza's Thunders your Marauders before they have a chance to get points, for example, or it artifact compressions them and then Ithne outs another compression, so that can be a bit of a brutal matchup to face. And of course scoia'tael is a little bit popular right now. I think there are a fair few more decks that are seeing a little bit more play these days, but it's still a very solid deck. And for the most part as well, the Spies decks as well can be quite useful, although if you get a Menno on your Marauder, then that's just one down, but you can see how we'll have plenty more Marauders being pumped, so they can get a lot of value, but you've already got a lot of value on the board anyway. Alright guys, so if you want to watch the matchups, there should be a link to it at the end of this video on my end card. If you really like the deck tech as well, be sure to like, subscribe, and if you hit that bell icon, you'll get notifications when my videos go live. I do hope you've enjoyed this deck tech, and hope you enjoy the matches, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.